College Savings Iowa is now iSave 529, and it can do more than take your child to college. It's their passport to a bright future, because funds can be used for K-12 tuition, trade schools, graduate degrees, books, and everything they need to get anywhere they want to go. Register by September 30th at iowa529contest.com for a chance to win a $5,290 contribution. iSave 529, for every child, for any adventure.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You have my sword.
And you have my bow.
And my trowel. Hi, you're listening to episode 26 of And My Trowel, where we look at the fantastic side of archaeology and the archaeological side of fantasy. I'm Tilly.
And I'm Ash.
And today we're going to be talking all about zombies.
Oh, that was a bit abrupt, Tilly.
Well, that's how they get you, isn't it? 1 second you're alive and kicking, and then the next you're dead and kicking.
All right. Fair enough. So why are we talking about zombies?
Well, you know that huge zombie colony over on the other side of Fangorn Forest?
Oh, you mean Vitally Challenged Corp, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, it's time for another census, so the local council can, keep an eye on the rate of zombie creation and ensure the population doesn't get out of hand.
Wait, you say another census? Like, when was the last one? Because I don't remember that.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't, because it was 7,000 years ago.
Ah.
Yes, that's council action for you. So, because it's been such a long time since the last census, they want us to go in, because, obviously if it's been a long time, call in the archaeologists. So they want us to go in and determine the approximate ages of the zombie population.
By which you mean their age at death, or how long they've been dead?
Yeah, how long they've been dead.
Ah, got it.
Yeah. So, first of all, what do you know about zombies? I don't really know much about zombies at all. I was thinking about this, and I don't think I've actually read that much that features zombies.
It's actually the one kind of creature that really freaks me out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I know. I'm very good with dead. I'm not good with newly dead. Like dead, bones, fine. Absolutely great. Perfect. Gooey? No. No. No.
Although, well, that's the thing though, right? Because there's the dead that are then just like they're dead and they just smell a bit. And then there's so you know who else features zombies in their fantasy universe?
I wonder who
it could be. So the zombies in Discworld are basically just normal people, and they stuff themselves with straw and stuff to make sure that they don't smell, and they use all sorts of things and everything. There's many amusing circumstances that occur because one of them's arm falls off and then causes a lady to faint and all of this kind of stuff.
But that sounds quite cute in a way.
Well, they're the sort that you wouldn't actually know that they're a zombie until something like that happened. Right, I see. You can kind of tell, but not really. So I guess those zombies are okay. But
yeah.
I know what you mean, though. It's that kind of, and it's always, I'm just thinking of films like The Witcher. There was that scene where all of the dead creatures come out and are attacking him and everything. And
yes.
it's the sound that they make, the and, no.
I just don't like the idea of being eaten alive. I think I don't think anyone does, but it sounds awful. Yeah. I mean, there's it's a kind of classic steampunky kind of trope, and but also more of a dystopian trope as well, because I think of World War Z or Z. It depends on how you say it, I don't know. The book. Have you read that? Where there's actually a film about it as well, where it's a zombie apocalypse, but it's about the people who are in the colony that are away from the zombies and stuff.
Mm.
So they're just a kind of classic brain eaters, not alive, not really thinking. But then there's been new kind of zombies, hasn't there? I mean, The Last of Us and stuff like that. The game is more based on
I've heard of that. I
plants.
don't know it, but
that's
yes.
horribly terrifying because it's actually a real plant that can do that to insects, and it's terrifying. So, yeah. I don't know if I have a favourite book with zombies in them, actually.
I think, well, I do like the Terry Pratchett ones with zombies, but yeah, I have to admit that's only really, but it was interesting. So when I was looking up like popular books with zombies in them, because I was like, I honestly can't really think of any. And I mean, you've got the classic like Game of Thrones, right? You've got the White Walkers, I think they're called.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the White Walkers.
Which are technically zombies, right?
Yeah.
Like, because they're undead. So I mean, you have that kind of stuff in fantasy, but there were so many discussions that I came across which were like, well, actually, zombies aren't fantasy; they're more like science fiction because it's about like disease and radiation and like all of these kind of stuff, which, you know, I guess is right, but you also have a lot in fantasy. I think in fantasy, it's usually like the army of the undead, like the sort of evil Dark Lord, which, you know, go back a few episodes and you'll find out about them, would have like an army of basically zombies.
Yeah, but they're also creating, like, there's Dark Lord often creates an army. So it's like creation rather than death, if that makes sense. But like,
right, building up. Yeah.
They like the
Uruk-hai.
Yeah, the Uruk-hai and stuff. They're kind of birthing these strange creatures. Yeah. Well, zombies is like the opposite, that you're taking control of already living things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, or you're sort of bringing them back. I'm also thinking of, have you read Bookshops and Bone Dust?
I have not. No, not yet. Okay. No.
Well, I don't want to spoil things for people listening as well, but that also features a sort of idea that, basically you can have control of the dead. Like you can make them stand up and walk around and things like that.
That's necromancy.
Well, this is the thing though, right? It's like, when is it a zombie? What is actually the definition of a zombie?
Have you got the definition of a zombie?
I'm going to look up the definition of a zombie. Definition. Oh, wow. Oxford English Dictionary. Zombie. A corpse said to be revived by witchcraft, especially in certain African and Caribbean religions. Or, do you want to know the second definition? Mm-hmm. A cocktail consisting of several kinds of rum, liquor, and fruit juice.
I have had a zombie cocktail before. Yeah.
Let's have a look. Okay, Merriam-Webster Dictionary is zombie, a will-less and speechless human held to have died and be supernaturally reanimated. So this comes from the sort of voodoo religions, which is where the zombie kind of first originated. That sort of kind of folklore in that respect. So it's a kind of supernatural power which then enters into and reanimates a dead body in that respect. So it's sort of a lot of overlap, I would say, with necromancy.
Yeah, what purpose do they use the zombie for?
Mainly for like servants, basically, to have sort of people to do their will, a way to make them labor, basically. So it wasn't like how we picture zombies, where they're then like monsters and they go and they terrorize everyone and everything. It's just that they were like lacking free will, so they were used as free labor, which, you know, you may as well use a dead person as free labor compared to that kind of thing. But it's very... So I had a quick look to see whether I could find a quick history of sort of zombies and voodoo and things. It is so complicated. Like, there is so much history to this. And I think we're going to have to do a whole episode on voodoo at some point because, this is just... too much.
Yeah. It's also good to point out that voodoo is not a negative thing. In fact, it's not at all. It's been kind of misunderstood, and there's also a heavy racial bias when it comes to looking at things like this, because they, you know, voodoo and zombies, and it's always been falsely accused of, you know, cannibalism and murder and things like that, which is not true. It's simply old racist ideas about what a different type of religion is. Yeah. So because
indeed it seems that voodoo was a bit different depending on where it was practiced. The most kind of popular one is the Haiti voodooism. Voodooism. I don't know if that's what it's called. Voodoo practices. But yeah, it was mainly about like predicting the future, herbal medicine and magic seems to be kind of the main things. And then it's more, the zombies are kind of an extra part of that, but they weren't necessarily considered the main thing. But there was like a massive panic where everyone was like, oh my gosh, they're going to be killing us and doing all these things and making us into zombies. And then that's sort of how that all came about. Interestingly enough, I found a really interesting article by Professor Amy Villens, who talked about how zombies and that kind of fear was actually quite often used by slave plantation owners to kind of make sure that their slaves wouldn't deliberately end their lives to get out of their horrendous conditions that they were living in, because they would say that they would be made into zombies and so they'd never be free. So it was
That's just absolutely awful, isn't
right?
it? Using their own beliefs and like religion against, I hate it. Oh, that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. So yes, it basically has a lot of what it was originally in kind of folklore is extremely different from what you would see in kind of our modern fantasy depictions of zombies. And it's been completely twisted and warped, much like the zombies themselves, one might say. So, yeah. We'll definitely have to do, I think, another episode on this and try and go into more detail about like folklore and religion in relation to fantasy. That would be a really interesting topic to do.
Yeah,
actually.
it's so in depth that as well.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff in there. I mean, think about how different it is now, our concepts, and like even as an archaeologist, you're trained to kind of set aside your own modern prejudices and beliefs in order to look into the past and interpret in a completely different way, because it was probably completely different.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine the whole genre of fantasy has been changed several billions of times,
I mean, can you imagine what it would be like? Because now zombies are, it's all like horror and, that sort of really tense thriller. That's the sort of association with zombies, unless you're looking at like Terry Pratchett. But imagine how different it would have been if we hadn't had that racist interaction in terms of making voodoo seem like a horrendous religion by sort of playing up that part compared to the majority of it, which was like completely normal and a religion. Like, imagine if that had been different and if that hadn't happened, what zombies would be like in fantasy fiction today as well. Like, it would be completely different, probably.
Yeah, imagine I think there's a lot of things, if things weren't racist, that would be completely different and better.
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we hadn't been racist dicks in the past?
It would be.
Yeah.
But
anyway, if anyone's listening in and thinking, this is my area of speciality and interest, please do get in touch. We're always looking for guest speakers who actually know what they're talking about to come on and talk about things. So if you happen to be someone who either practices voodoo religion or understands it a lot more than we do, then please do get in contact. We'd love to have you on to chat about it at some point. But so it's sort of, developed a lot from its origins, the kind of idea of zombies. And now you even have things like, Pride and Prejudice and zombies, which is technically a fantasy.
I was just thinking of that.
Have you read it?
Yes, I've also got the Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters.
And Sea Monsters. I haven't read that one, I must admit.
It's not my favourite. I'm not going to lie. I prefer the actual Jane Austen. But like the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is quite good. And it's a lot of fun. And like martial arts and stuff is in it. And it's like, why not?
Can you imagine? I can't remember what the author's name is now, actually. I'm very sorry. The author of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I'm going to quickly
look it up. Of Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Because can you imagine the kind of Seth Graham Smith? It's
kind
of a parody, but
it's also like a graphic novel because there's pictures in it as well.
Oh,
yeah. So there's bits where, like, spoilers, Elizabeth and Lady Catherine de Bourgh like fight and stuff, and there's like a and they're done in the Regency style as well. So that's like almost like a news kind of, one of those, what are they called, like the printing work ones.
Not an announcement, but the papers.
It's like done as it would have been a Regency book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I must say, I do really love fantasy books that do that, like sort of take a bit of a parody of something else and make it fantasy, it's...
I mean, it's like fan fiction, really, isn't it?
Okay, well, so we've worked out that we don't really know anything about zombies, which, or the history of zombies and voodoo religion and where it originated. But we do know about archaeology. So we can have a little think about how we're going to do this census. Before we go into more detail on that, let me just consult my scrolls here to see if I can find the results of the last census, and we'll be back with you very soon.
College Savings Iowa is now iSave529, and it can do more than take your child to college. It's their passport to a bright future, because funds can be used for K-12 tuition, trade schools, graduate degrees, books, and everything they need to get anywhere they want to go. Register by September 30th at iowa529contest.com for a chance to win a $5,290 contribution. iSave529, for every child, for any adventure.
Welcome back, everyone. So yeah, I looked through the scrolls and it's a bit all over the place. I don't know what they were doing 7,000 years ago, but it wasn't particularly organized. So I think it's best to just almost pretend it doesn't exist and just start from scratch.
Oh, okay. So we need to do a bit of survey and work out when the zombies became zombies. So where do we begin?
Well, first we probably need to decide on a methodology. So, I mean, what would you think would be the best way to date a zombie?
Invite it to dinner and order the liver.
Oh, God. How did I know that was going to happen?
No. I wonder what they eat. No, I know what they eat.
Brains, isn't it?
Brains. Okay, but seriously, maybe something like radiocarbon dating, or do we know how that actually works, Tilly?
Well, luckily for you, I happen to have read several scrolls on the subject just this morning, so I can give a little bit of an introduction. So, radiocarbon dating. Radiocarbon dating is also one of those things that I think every archaeologist is just like, yeah, radiocarbon dating. And then if you ask, how does it actually work? It's like, oh, well, there's carbon and
there's a half-life.
Yeah, there's a half-life. Well done. Yes, that's good. So, but to go back to the beginning. So actually it was first developed as a method for archaeology in the 1940s. So actually pretty recent, really. And it was done at the University of Chicago by Professor Willard Libby, who actually received a Nobel Prize for the work. So there you go. That's how important it was. Do you know the other word for radiocarbon dating?
Carbon-14.
Carbon-14 dating. Well,
hey,
flux.
This is going to be a new archaeology question that I'll never get right.
Well, and carbon-14 is an isotope. Did you do like chemistry and things at high school? Like, did you ever learn about this stuff?
Did I have an education? Yeah, I did actually. we did. Actually, it was the only bit of like physics that I enjoyed was talking about half-lives. We did it.
Cool. There you go.
And
it was fate.
Chemistry was. We didn't even talk about it in chemistry, I don't think. Oh,
really?
I had a really terrible teacher. So, yeah, I was shouted at him because he was so terrible.
Oh gosh.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we did learn about isotopes and stuff like that. But I mostly learned about radiocarbon dating at university. In first year, that was when I really got to understand it. I wasn't very good at sciences.
Well, I really liked science at school and I was going to become more full on science, but then I wasn't. It's annoying. Chemistry was one of those ones that in the class I was really good. Like I was always the first done and I was, on top of everything. I understood everything. And then at the exam, I'd just flunk. Like I'd always misunderstand the question.
I know why. Because in science papers at school, you had to be extremely specific. You, Tilly, love to dawdle.
You're talking about? I don't understand what you're saying.
You like to be like, yes, but you can be
very specific.
this, which is fine. That's what I did, and that's why I was
luckily
because you couldn't write it very specific. I couldn't be succinct. I had to keep going on.
Well, luckily I would get my marks for like working through, so even if like the first one was wrong, you just get the marks for working through. Like it would, so it sort of worked out. It wasn't terrible, but it was just annoying because I was so good at it in class. And then the exams were the only things that counted. And you're like,
you had to do it word for word. Like if that sentence wasn't exactly that sentence, you weren't going to get the mark.
Which was so annoying.
Yeah, it was really annoying.
Anyway, and then I went on and did archaeological science. So, I apparently didn't learn, but
We are we women in STEM.
Yeah, there you go. Which is also why I thought it would be interesting to talk about radiocarbon dating this episode, because a lot of people, I think, do assume that archaeology is just blabbering away and doing humanities stuff. But actually, there's a lot of science in it. And to be fair, most of archaeologists probably don't understand it, but a lot of them do. So that's why we're teaching it.
A good friend that did her PhD, most of it on radiocarbon dating.
There you go. But anyway, we had one of like the biggest people in radiocarbon dating, which typically I've forgotten his name, as one of our professors for our course on dating methods. So many jokes made in my Masters of Archaeological Science. And we had to do a paper on our dating method. And I think everyone but me and Jess, actually, who was on a previous episode about vampires, we decided to pick different dating methods. So she did endocrinology and I did thermoluminescence dating, and everyone else in the class picked radiocarbon dating. And I was like, why would you do that? He is like one of the leading experts on radiocarbon dating. Why would you write a paper on his expert subject? And yeah, we got much better marks, the two of us, because it was something that he was slightly less familiar with. Anyway, we've done a typical example of me rambling on while I'm supposed to be being succinct about the science. So,
see?
It's been 5 minutes. And all I've said is carbon-14 is an isotope. Do you know what an isotope is, Ash? And now we've chatted for 5 minutes. Anyway.
6 protons and 8 neutrons.
And we still don't know what an isotope is. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So indeed, it's basically same number of protons, different number of neutrons. Those of you who can vaguely remember your chemistry or physics or whatever class you learned it in should hopefully remember those things. So those are called isotopes. So atoms of elements with the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. So carbon-14, carbon-12, and carbon-13 are all isotopes of the element carbon. However, carbon-12 and 13 are stable, which means that they do not emit radiation. They just chill and they just stay where they are. But carbon-14 is unstable, which means it emits radiation, and therefore it decays over time. And this is important because this is where that half-life that Ash is so obsessed with comes in.
I love half-life. I love it.
Can you remember the half-life of carbon-14 approximately?
Oh my God, Tilly, why did you do this to me? No.
Approximately. Very roughly.
No, I cannot.
I also didn't remember. I had to look it up. So it's
about, it's 5,600 years.
It is 5,600.
I read that in the script.
Well done. You might have read that in the notes. Don't say that, Ash. You should have just looked through and been like, oh yeah, I think it's like 5,600 years.
Approximately. I don't know.
So this basically means that, indeed, 5,600 years, which, what does that mean? That means that after 5,600 years, the amount of carbon in a creature that's died will be half as much as when it was alive. Because when an organism or a creature is alive, it's constantly kind of replenishing its carbon-14 and it's, taking in stuff from the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide and other things. But once it dies, of course, it's not replenishing its inner carbon-14 kind of sources anymore. So because it's decaying over time, that means that the carbon-14 levels will decrease. And this is the rate of decay. The rate of decrease is this half-life of 5,600 years. So what you need to do is find a dead thing, look at how much carbon-14 is in it, and then calculate based on your known, half-life equation, how long it's then been dead, because based on how much carbon-14 is left in it, you know how long it's been there decaying. So, yeah, that's a very, very, very simplified description of radiocarbon dating or carbon-14 dating. How do you think I did, Ash? Do you think I've missed anything, Paige?
I think you did fantastic.
Was it okay? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think it was very, very good. How I remember it is that we had one lecture, I think I've talked about this before, about the dead cow.
Oh, no.
So there was a site, I can't remember where, a roundhouse was burning, fell on a cow, killed the cow, and the roundhouse had completely disappeared, but the cow's body was still in its place. So they could radiocarbon date the cow, and they basically could get a very accurate reading of when that fire happened, because the cow died
at the moment
of the fire.
That's like the ultimate, smashed watch at a murder scene.
Yes.
Dead cow in a roundhouse burn. We should write a murder mystery about that.
That's good. Honestly, I remember it stuck with me all these years.
Yeah.
But but then there's also the problem with in the industrial age. So we can't radiocarbon date anything after 1940, I believe.
90, I think it's 1950 officially, but it's like around
because it's whenever we dropped
the nuclear bombs.
We can't radiocarbon date. So basically anyone about 1,000 years wants to radiocarbon date us, we'll have very strange sequels.
Which I think it is going down again. So they think while it's going to get back to normal. But indeed, there was suddenly a lot more carbon-14 in the atmosphere than there should have been. And that's kind of, which interestingly enough is why 1950 is present. And I watched a QI episode the other day and they were asking, when is present? And everyone was like, oh, and it was lots of joking. And then she said 1950. And I was like, oh yeah, of course. Because it's before present means before 1950, because it's up to that point that you can date things with radiocarbon dating. So
there you go. Fun fact of the day, everyone.
Yeah, there you go for people listening in. So indeed, 1950 is kind of the most recent you can date. And do you know how old you can date something with radiocarbon dating?
About, was it like 60,000 years or something?
Yeah, exactly. 60,000 is like the limit. And I think they say like 40,000 is sort of the last bit accurately. And then between 40 and 60, and it's basically because by that point, there's probably little to no carbon left in the sample. So it just won't be very, very accurate in that respect.
Yeah. So that's an issue.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an issue. And then there's also the marine reservoir effect, which is basically the sea absorbs different levels of carbon than the atmosphere does. So any sea living animal will have a different level to the one that's like assumed based on the atmosphere. So I think they said it was like 400 years older or younger. I can't remember now exactly which one it was. I think it was older, 400 years older than what they actually were because they lived in the sea. So,
we also can have an issue with anything that eats.
Yes,
like
exactly. Purely.
From the sea. Because we have that problem in the Hebrides with sheep. And sheep poo, because they will eat the seaweed and then it will screw up your radiocarbon dates.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, if you need to take something for radiocarbon dating, it has to be clean. You have to know what kind of animal or what kind of creature or whatever it's come from, and make sure that you know that is definitely that kind of animal, that is definitely that layer in the stratigraphy, and that's what you're dating. So yes, so that's important. But that will be fine for our zombies.
Because they're 7,000.
They're 7,000 years old, so that's a good time. And they're, just wandering around, so we can just try to take samples from them somehow. We need to work out.
You can do that.
I'll do that.
I'm wondering how you can distract them.
And I'll take the sample. So we could do radiocarbon dating. I don't know. Do you know if can you think of any other sort of potential ways of sort of dating zombies? I mean, maybe, I guess, similar to how you might date, I don't know, a burial that you don't have any context for.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking. It's like they're walking burials.
Yeah.
Would their clothing still be around? Because a lot of the times when you see zombies, they're often in like rags of what they were buried in. Or I actually quite like that when you see them like pop up in like period clothing.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see like
Yeah. So it could be that you could do that way.
Yeah, even if they're not like wearing the clothes that they were buried in, they still might prefer that fashion. So they sort of go for old-fashioned clothing and things and like hairstyles and like all that kind of thing. So yeah, could do more of like a sociological survey of them in that respect.
That would be cool. Take them shopping and see what to go for.
I wonder if they have a shopping like centre on Vitally Challenged Corp.
I think they do. I was just thinking, have you ever seen that TV programme about zombies that are being trying to be rehabilitated back into society after a zombie apocalypse?
No, I have not.
Well, it's called In the Flesh, and it was basically about, zombies that they could take a drug and they would no longer be like rabid, essentially. Oh. And then they could be integrated back into society. And they had to do that. They had to like take them to like get clothing and like, because it was like your great granny and stuff like that who had been dead for several yes, and things like that. So they did bits of that, but it was also quite interesting because it was talking about like segregation and stuff, and it was like had a lot of deep things going on about it, and like relationships between people who were zombies and who weren't, and who were human, who weren't, people who had killed them or and stuff like that. So It was quite interesting. And they sort of had to do the same sort of thing. They had to kind of be like, well, how old are you? Like,
yeah.
Where are you from? And where have you been? Like, and they had to do all these kind of tests to find where they'd lived and things like isotope analysis. And yeah.
There you go. We just need to, we need to watch this show, apparently. This is basically what we need to do. Yeah. Because, that would make sense. And I mean, also, like, associated artifacts and stuff is something similar as well. Like, they probably have some stuff left from when they died, like almost burial goods. Yeah,
or like, say, if they were attacked and then turned into a zombie, they could have a wallet. They could, any of those kind of things.
Yeah. The axe that's embedded in their head is like from a particular time period. Yeah,
that would be interesting. Viking with zombies running around the place.
Okay, well, so I think we have a plan then.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but radiocarbon dating would be the fun way. Yeah. Actually, I think taking them to the shops would be a fun way.
Would be a fun way.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do like multiple samples then. Like we could do some sampling with radiocarbon dating, and then we could do and attempt like these different methods.
Yeah, I mean, the more evidence we have, the better we have like to understand them and fill out this census, really, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And can they talk?
I don't know, actually. This is something we have to work out, because in quite a lot of fiction, zombies can't talk, but in a lot of them they can talk. So it'll be interesting to see. I've never interacted with the zombie colony at Vitally Challenged Corp, so
we should maybe send a forwarding email asking these questions.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. It sounds easy, but I always feel like there's a catch.
Yeah. Probably, fighting for your life in a zombie colony, being the only living.
True.
So, okay. Well, we need to venture into the middle of a massive zombie colony, take samples from as many individuals as we can, and then send them off to Radiocarbon Date the Lab, probably take them shopping. And then that's it, right?
Yeah, sounds very easy. Right?
Right, yeah. But they'll, it's council, so it'll always be a bit of a nightmare.
There's bound to be some small print that we have missed.
Exactly. So I'll go and get our zombie suits ready.
Great, thank you. Well, that's about it for this episode of And My Trowel. We hope you enjoyed this quest. If there's any suggestions that people have for an episode, maybe you have a concept that you don't understand, like radiocarbon dating, that we might be able to help explain through fantasy, or maybe there's something in a fantasy book you've read that you want to find out more about from an archaeological viewpoint, do get in contact via email or social media. All of our contact info, as well as the references and further reading for all the points we've discussed today, can be found in the show notes.
So, Tilly, we just got this parchment through, and it smells a little bit weird.
Smells like brimstone. Oh no, is it the wizards again? Ugh, I wish they'd never chosen us in the first place.
Well, actually, speaking of chosen ones...
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.